January 1928, Cranwell Royal Air Force College, England. Frost bites at the parade ground. Breath hangs in the morning air like smoke from silent engines waiting to be born. Young cadets march across stone and mud, dreams of flight blazing behind rigid discipline. Among them walks a thin, sharp-eyed 19-year-old, with a stride that seems faster than the rest, as if his mind outruns his body. His name is Frank Whittle, son of a working-class machinist, hardly destined for aviation greatness in a British system that favours aristocrats and tradition. In the barracks, most cadets talk of air patrols, officer life, flying machines. Whittle talks of speed, of atmosphere, of fuel burning in compressed fury, of a future where aircraft break limits thought sacred. His instructors admire his ambition, then quietly dismiss it. Aviation, to them, is a matter of propellers, pistons, polish, burning fuel straight into forward thrust, a flight engine without cylinders, madness, or worse, arrogance. But Whittle has seen the future in textbooks and imagination. If engines stay as they are, aircraft will always crawl compared to what physics allows. Propellers slice the air, yes. But they also fight it. Why spin a blade, he reasons, when you could take the sky itself, compress it, ignite it, and explode forward? He writes his first paper at 19. A radical concept, the turbojet. No one has built one. No one is asking for one. Britain, still proud of biplanes and imperial comfort, sees no need. His paper receives polite interest and bureaucratic indifference. His idea is filed away. Interesting theory, one officer notes, but impractical. Whittle does not get discouraged. He gets obsessed. He works through nights, fueled by mathematics, not caffeine. He is laughed at by classmates, ignored by superiors, and warned by doctors about stress at an age where most young men worry only about rank and romance. He has neither privilege nor influence. What he has is something rarer. Vision sharpened by necessity, hunger forged by intellect, and the quiet fury of someone who sees tomorrow while trapped in yesterday's world. He graduates. He flies fighters. He becomes one of the RAF's most gifted young pilots, mastering machines that he already believes outdated. Between sorties and instruction postings, he returns to notebooks filled with equations and sketches. After 3 years of silence, he submits another proposal for his jet engine. This time not to officers, but to engineers. Suddenly, someone listens. 2 retired RAF officers, intrigued by his persistence, form a small company around him. Power Jets Limited is born not in a palace of government funding, but in borrowed corners of factories and workshops where tools smell of grease and electricity, and genius smells like desperation. Whittle does not celebrate. He goes to work. He dismantles scrap metal. He draws blueprints on tables meant for parts catalogues. He welds experimental compressor blades by hand. When funding dries, he pawns belongings. When engineers raise eyebrows, he raises stakes. When bureaucrats demand results without support, he promises miracles and then builds them. In early tests, the engine screams, trembles, nearly tears itself apart. Flames roar, bearings seize, metal glows red. Neighbours complain. Officials shake heads. But beneath the chaos is something miraculous. Pure thrust, a force no piston has ever produced. Britain now has the seed of the jet age, and almost no one realises it. Yet, while Whittle fights for funding in small workshops, another man across the channel receives state support, laboratories, entire factories. Hans von Ohain, Germany's own jet pioneer. Whittle learns, to his horror, that his idea is not unique. The difference? Germany believes in theirs. Britain doubts its own. Whittle's engine runs first, but quietly, unofficially, without the roar of government backing. Germany's engine flies first, loudly, on record, with national pride. For a moment, Whittle looks like a visionary outpaced, his nation asleep while another arms itself with the future. But ideas do not win wars. Endurance does. Whittle's engine improves. It grows stronger, more stable, more refined. He convinces allies one by one. Machinists, investors, military observers, and eventually commanders who realize they stand at the edge of an era where altitude, speed, and urgency decide survival. He loses sleep, he loses weight, he loses years of peace normal men enjoy. But he gains something rarer: momentum. By the late 1930s, storm clouds gather over Europe. War approaches, and suddenly innovation once ignored becomes necessity. Now the same offices that stamped impractical search desperately for advantage. And there, in a factory corner where metal dust clings to sweat, Frank Whittle stands ready. His first full test engine roars behind metal shields. Flames stabilize. Turbines spin smooth. Instruments tremble, then settle. Observers stare. The engine doesn't sputter. It sings. The sound less like machinery, and more like the beginning of something new. Whittle does not cheer. He simply exhales, exhausted and triumphant, the weight of years collapsing into a single truth. The future has arrived, and he built it with disbelief, pressing against him every step. But the war hasn't started yet. The world doesn't know his name, and his greatest test won't be invention. It will be convincing a nation to trust a dream before it's too late. As dawn breaks over a Britain racing toward conflict, one question lingers like heat around a turbine blade. When war demands miracles, will the world finally listen to the man who already built one? If you believe forgotten minds like this deserve recognition, like the video and subscribe. The jet age is about to take flight. July 1939, Power Jets Factory, Lutterworth, England. The summer heat settles thick over brick walls and corrugated roofs. Inside the workshop, the air vibrates with tension, not machinery. Workers move like men preparing for battle, sleeves rolled, faces smudged with oil and sleepless nights. On a metal test stand rests a creation that shouldn't exist in this humble place. Frank Whittle's first full-scale jet engine, an iron heartbeat waiting to breathe fire. War looms, but nobody outside this building knows what kind of future hangs in balance. Newspapers shout politics. Generals talk artillery. Admirals talk ships. Few imagine that the coming war will be won not only by blood and bravery, but by velocity. Whittle stands silent. His hair looks older now, his eyes deeper, as if each rejection carved lines sharper than any tool could. Years of doubt live in his shoulders, but so does steel. Before him hums a machine that once lived only in notebooks mocked by superiors. Now it sits here, real, heavy, alive in potential. His engineers check gauges, fuel lines are secured, fire blankets nearby, more symbolic hope than real safety. This is not a laboratory funded by empire. This is a miracle assembled by necessity, sweat and conviction. The ignition command echoes, hesitant but determined. Fuel, compressor, spark, a cough, a shudder. Then a scream of power. Metal vibrates, bolts strain. A roar floods the building, not like an aircraft piston chattering against gravity, but a deep, continuous, unnatural howl, as if the sky itself is being pulled forward by force. Flames curl, then stabilize into a perfect plume. Gauges climb. Whittle stares, jaw clenched, hands shaking. Not fear, but the release of years collapsing into truth. The world's second jet engine runs. But here's the difference. This one runs better. It isn't a prototype rushed by military might. It isn't a lab experiment protected by state privilege. It is raw, rugged, tested in secrecy and starvation, improved by men who believed because belief was all they had. Observers from the Air Ministry watch, stunned. One officer whispers, "It works. It actually works." Whittle doesn't smile. He nods once. He knew. He always knew. But recognition does not come immediately. Bureaucracy, pride, and politics are slower than thermodynamics. The RAF, still tied to propeller legacy, hesitates again. Funds trickle, not flow. Skeptics still breathe loudly in meeting rooms, clinging to old doctrines like anchors in rising wind. Whittle keeps pushing. Meetings, reports, demonstrations. His engine is not just a proof, it is a revolution waiting for courage. He visits factories, speaks to industrialists, begs for resources. Britain refuses to fully grasp. Meanwhile, across Europe, engines roar for a different purpose. Germany invades Poland. War ignites the continent. The RAF scrambles. Fighter pilots climb into Hurricanes and Spitfires. Brilliant. Machines, but powered by pistons, Whittle knows are already historical echoes. His health cracks. Stress builds like pressure in a combustion chamber with no outlet. He collapses from exhaustion. Doctors warn him his body carries the strain of men twice his age. He keeps going anyway. Rest, they say. But rest is a luxury for those not racing time itself. Late nights he sits alone, calculating compressor ratios on scrap paper, while bombers from abroad test Britain's night skies. It is strange to be fighting for speed, while the enemy's speed grows louder overhead. Finally, the moment arrives. Bureaucrats yield, funding increases. The RAF orders a test aircraft. The Gloucester E-2839 begins construction. A compact machine built not around pistons but around Whittle's dream. Engineers whisper, pilots stare. It looks familiar, yet foreign, simple in shape, but hiding a storm inside. The day of flight arrives. The jet lines up. The engine starts, smoother now, confident. Pilots accustomed to vibration and roar feel something unsettling. Smooth acceleration, thrust without mechanical struggle, power delivered like a whisper turning into a scream. The aircraft rises. No propeller cuts the air. No piston shakes the cockpit. Just raw thrust and pure wind over wings. Observers on the ground stand in silence, as history rewrites itself above them. Britain has entered the jet age. And yet, that moment does not arrive with parades or headlines. No cheering crowds, no victory speeches. The flight is classified, buried under war secrecy. Britain is too busy surviving to celebrate innovation. Whittle watches the landing, breath held until wheels touch earth. The pilot steps out, eyes wide with disbelief and adrenaline. Frank, this thing flies like the future. For a brief moment, Whittle allows himself a small smile, tired, humble, the smile of a man who did not need applause to confirm truth. But fate is not finished testing him. The RAF still hesitates to scale production. Britain has bombs to build, ships to launch, factories stretched thin by survival. Jet aircraft remain experimental while the enemy advances. Whittle, having given the world the key to a new era, is handed paperwork, restrictions, committees. He returns to work anyway. He refines turbines, improves combustors, reinvents metallurgy within cramped rooms. His life becomes cycles of technical brilliance and institutional resistance, the eternal war between visionaries and systems built to fear change. Soon another threat arrives, not from across borders, but from across the Atlantic. American intelligence officers visit. They see the engine. They understand immediately. Their country has factories, resources, ambition. They make notes. They ask questions. They leave impressed and determined. Whittle senses what is coming. If Britain does not run forward, America will run past. And Germany still lurks with its own jet efforts, roaring in hidden test fields, preparing engines for war machines that could change the balance of the skies. Whittle stands at the centre of a storm. Genius pushing forward, nations waking up late, rivals accelerating. He has lifted Britain into the future, yet feels the weight of decisions not his to make. He knows what is possible. He knows what is coming. He knows time is now his true enemy. The jet engine exists. It works. It flies. But war rewards speed, not just invention. And now the question burns hotter than turbine fire itself. Will Britain embrace the future fast enough? Or will the world's jet age be led by those who believed sooner, funded harder and moved faster? August 1941, RAF Cranwell, England. The wind cuts across the airfield, carrying the smell of fuel and war tension. A lone aircraft sits at the edge of the runway, squat and sleek, no propeller in sight. Mechanics stand back, unsure whether they are watching the birth of something historic or the explosion of a dream that pushed a man too far. The Gloucester E2839 moves. A faint hum rises, then expands into a clean, smooth roar. Not the coughing pulse of pistons, but a pure thrust, like the sky being pulled tight and released. Pilots nearby freeze, eyes narrowing. They have heard every engine from biplanes to Spitfires, but this sound does not belong to their era. The jet lifts. Britain leaves the world of propellers behind. Frank Whittle watches from the ground. His uniform hangs looser now. Fatigue and pressure have eaten into him. The past few years carved trenches into his face deeper than any battlefield could. He has fought generals, ministers, accountants, and the limits of metallurgy. He has nearly broken, mind and body. But the machine in the sky proves one thing. He was right all along. The aircraft lands. The pilot steps out, stunned, almost reverent. "Frank," he says, "this isn't an improvement. It's a different world." Yet, even now, nothing is easy. The RAF acknowledges the breakthrough, but slowly. Factories remain busy with conventional engines. Budgets are strained. Leaders still think jets will come after the war. Meanwhile, intelligence reports confirm what Whittle feared. Germany has a jet too. Not a prototype in a shed, but a funded, structured program. Their first jet has flown. Their second is coming. Whittle should celebrate victory. Instead, he feels dread. Innovation means nothing if bureaucracy moves slower than war. He pushes harder. Meetings stretch late. Engineers collapse at benches. They trim metal, grind turbine blades, adjust fuel controls. Every improvement in airflow steals sleep and health. Whittle's mind runs like his engines. Fast, hot, relentless. Nights bring tremors, headaches, doctors urging rest. He ignores them. Nations don't win by resting. In Washington, American officers have seen his jet. They return home silently impressed and determined to act. Where Britain hesitates, America accelerates. Whittle senses the shift like a pilot feeling turbulence before the wings do. Britain has genius. America has industry. One spark, two engines of fate. The RAF finally orders the Meteor, the world's first Allied jet fighter. Production begins, test flights follow. The machine works, rough at first, then smoother, then powerful. It is fast, silent compared to piston roar, deadly in potential, but war doesn't wait for perfection. Spring 1944, Europe burns. Allied bombers roar to Berlin. The Luftwaffe strains under pressure. The first German jet fighter, the Me-262, appears in the skies. Fast, sleek, deadly. Pilots call it a silver. Swallow from hell. Allied command panics. The future has arrived, in enemy camouflage. Whittle watches reports, knowing that somewhere a German engineer must feel the same fire he does. A race neither man asked for, but history demanded. The Meteor rolls out, green and purposeful. Pilots climb in, nerves tight. The first combat jets of the free world take off. They do not duel the German jets directly, not yet, but they hunt V-1 flying bombs. They catch them, strike them, destroy them. Speed becomes a weapon, and Britain finally sees what it nearly lost. Whittle receives handshakes, medals, praise. But victory comes at a cost no award repays. His company, Power Jets, is absorbed by the state. Decisions shift away from him. Younger engineers step in. The empire that once ignored him now controls his dream. And Whittle, exhausted, burned by genius and duty, is forced to step back. He built the engine of the future, and it consumed him. He spends long days staring at fields where jets now practice, streaks of heat trailing behind them, soldiers cheering, commanders nodding proudly. Machines he conjured now roar beyond his reach. History will celebrate the aircraft. Pilots will wear the wings. Nations will claim the glory. But the man who lit the fire walks slowly, hands clasped behind his back, breathing quietly as turbines thunder overhead. A reminder that sometimes victory feels like surrender. The world enters the jet age. Frank Whittle watches it fly away from him. And a question hangs over tarmac and time. Did Britain recognise its genius, or simply arrive just fast enough not to lose him to another flag? If you want more stories of hidden minds who shaped history from the shadows, like and subscribe. Au revoir. The world's quiet geniuses deserve a voice. October 1945, London, England. The war has ended. Streets choke with celebration. Flags rise, soldiers return, bells ring across cathedrals once shadowed by sirens. The world breathes again. But in a quiet government office far from cheering crowds, a man who changed history sits at a desk stacked with papers instead of glory. Frank Whittle adjusts his uniform cuffs, staring not at victory parades, but at memoranda stamped with neat indifference. The war that proved him right has finished, yet peace brings a different kind of battlefield. Committees, policies, subtle dismissal behind polite smiles. Power Jets, the company he built from sweat and faith, no longer belongs to him. It's been absorbed, reorganized under state control, placed in hands that did not bleed for it. Meetings now feel like interrogations. Vision drowns in process. Engineers who once whispered Whittle was right now speak in careful tones. The machinery roars outside. But the dreamer stands silent at its edge. Whittle's wife sees the change. Shoulders sag. Evenings stretch in quiet frustration. He walks less like a pioneer and more like a man trying to remember why the future he created feels suddenly unfamiliar. Doctors warn him again. Exhaustion, stress, nerves burned raw by years of strain. But the damage is done. His body trembles. His heart strains under the weight of invention and bureaucracy. Genius, people say, comes with a price. But no one mentions the bill might arrive after triumph, not before. Abroad, another nation moves faster. Across the Atlantic, factories roar. Blueprints multiply. Young American engineers study Whittle's patents, his turbine diagrams, his compressor stages. US industry, unbombed, fueled by wartime expansion, pours resources into aviation. The jet age accelerates, not in Britain's skies, but America's. Whittle reads reports, Bell XP-59, inspired by his work. General Electric turbines, influenced by his designs. US jets rolling out faster, bigger, louder. He is not angry, he is tired, and quietly proud. Even if pride tastes like ash. The technology he fought for has taken flight. He just didn't expect it to fly away so quickly. Meetings continue. Civil servants speak of budgets, efficiency, new leadership. Whittle listens politely. The same patience he used to endure officers who once told him jet engines were nonsense. He survived skepticism. Now he endures gratitude with clipped wings. Outside, jet engines scream through test flights. But Whittle hears only echoes of the first engine he built by hand, in a workshop that smelled of fear and hope. Machines evolve, nations evolve, but sometimes visionaries don't get to pilot the world they invented. Opportunity approaches from unexpected places. Engineers from overseas write. Companies hint at offers. Pilots speak his name with reverence in mess halls. Yet Britain hesitates to let him move freely. Genius becomes national property, once recognised. The RAF gives him rank, honours, ceremony. But ceremony is not freedom, and medals are not tools. He leaves the ministry offices and walks along the Thames. London rebuilds. Rubble cleared, cranes rising, hope returning brick by brick. Children run with paper planes. A squadron of meteors roars overhead, silver arrows slicing clouds clean. He looks up. He feels pride. He feels loss. Both truths live together. The world is moving at jet speed now. But Whittle walks alone, slower than he once did. In public speeches, leaders praise British innovation. In private corridors, someone else signs the decisions. The man who birthed a revolution becomes a footnote in administrative ledgers. Not forgotten, but not understood either. The Americans invite him again. They ask him to see what they are building. Engines larger, aircraft faster, skies wider. Curiosity, once restrained, now pulls at him harder than duty. He knows what Britain gave him. He knows what it cost. He knows loyalty. But he also knows this. Genius suffocates in places where progress fears risk. His health worsens, his patience thins. The nation moves into a future he built, without him at the controls. And the question lingers like smoke from exhaust trails disappearing over a horizon he once dreamed of. Is it enough to create the future if others are the ones who get to fly it? 1957, Washington, D.C. The hum of air conditioning replaces the drone of wartime factories. Outside, America strides into a new era, highways carving continents, skyscrapers rising like steel prayers, jetliners stitching cities and oceans together. The world has become small, fast, restless. Exactly as he once imagined, long before anyone believed it possible. Frank Whittle stands in a quiet hallway of the Pentagon, hands in pockets, listening to distant echoing footsteps and muffled voices. Officers pass by with nods of respect. The kind reserved not for politicians, but for men who once held the future in their palm and chose to open their hand instead of closing it. He is no longer a young rebel in a workshop fighting for attention. His hair is thinner, his shoulders less tense, his smile slower, but his eyes still hold that spark, the silent fire of a man who saw tomorrow too early and paid the tax for it in isolation and exhaustion. America welcomes him not as an inconvenience, but as a legend. General Electric, Pratt & Whitney, Boeing. Companies that once studied his patents from across the ocean now shake his hand, offer him seats at tables where budgets are unlimited, and imagination has engines strapped to it. Engineers show him diagrams of turbines taller than men, blades carved to molecular tolerances, combustion chambers glowing like suns caged in steel. They speak his language: airflow, compression ratios, thermal efficiency, not as theory, but as the foundation of a booming empire. Jetliners roar overhead on their way to Europe. Fighters crack the sound barrier. Bombers patrol the sky like metal constellations. Civilian airports buzz with travellers who complain about delays rather than marvel at miracles. The world changed, and somehow the man who changed it fits quietly into a corner of it. He returns to Britain from time to time, invited to ceremonies, honoured in speeches. But the halls that once ignored him now feel foreign, not hostile, not cold, simply too small for the scale of what his mind unleashed. He does not resent, he does not boast, he simply exists between two nations, a buzzin born British, adopted by the jet age itself. Years pass, students write his name in theses, pilots toast him, governments award medals. But true validation arrives in quieter moments, like when a group of young engineers approach him after a lecture, notebooks in hand, eyes bright with the same fever he once had. "Sir," one says, "without your engine none of this would exist." Whittle smiles, tired, gentle, the smile of a man who finally realizes something profound. He did not lose anything. The world gained everything. In 1976, Queen Elizabeth knights him, formally recognizing what history already knew. Sir Frank Whittle, pilot, engineer, father of the jet age. He spends his later years near the coast, listening to seagulls cry and the distant rumble of engines at altitude, a constant reminder that his imagination did not end in workshops or war rooms. It conquered gravity, it shaped continents, it bent time and space into schedules and air routes. It turned skies once ruled by clouds into highways of steel and sound. Sometimes he sits on a bench, cane beside him, and children point upward at contrails slicing the blue. "Look, a jet!" he nods. He does not correct them. He does not say, "I built the first one." Genius does not need noise. The engines make enough. Frank Whittle leaves this world quietly in 1996, not in a laboratory or an office, but in peace. The rare kind granted only to those who changed the future so profoundly that history has no choice but to catch up and salute. Today, every airport runway, every distant contrail, every roar of power lifting machines into the sky is a monument carved not in stone, but in motion. A legacy written in thrust, speed, and altitude. And one truth remains unshakable beneath the roar of a billion engines. He did not just invent the jet. He gave humanity wings faster than time itself. So now the question rests with us. the descendants of a world he launched into the future. When history is written, do we remember the pilots who flew, the maw or the mind that first dared to believe mankind could break the air and never slow down again?